Shalom. And I want to appreciate the Father for every opportunity that we have. And I was looking at Torah portion this week, and I looked at the Torah portion. It just really stirred up in my heart. We have been in a series on Matthew chapter 5, and we'll be getting back into that. But the last couple of weeks, last week and this week, there's a detour that I have been impressed upon to go. And we talked a little bit about last week about using fear and anger, and we talked about how from the Hebrew wording, the word fear is the word that means, in the Hebrew it means no brother, and then the word anger means where is the father. And so it's so important for us to understand that we have been positioned securely. We have His truth, His word, and we have His instructions, and that's going to keep us protected. So, in the Torah portion, it was the Torah portion that was broken down. It is called Pekudei. And what it means is the accounting or the account or account. And it was really laying out the reality of everything that's occurring or happening in the order, construction of the Mishkan, which we know as the tabernacle, and the furnishings that were to be in the tabernacle, how the camp was supposed to be laid out. And we're going to go to Exodus chapter 39. And it was talking about how the garment of the priest was to be. And so as I was, reading that, it just occurred to me, and I had a little drop. I had my heart set on continuing Matthew chapter 5 today after taking a detour last week. And then last night, we were gathered and fellowshipping with some friends and over Shabbat dinner. I had like a little download and said, I have to excuse myself for a minute. And I need to kind of chew on it for a moment. And so my heart was directed toward this particular thing because the truth of the matter, as we look at everything that has happened, that's going on in the world, it's important for us to understand where the true, first to understand where the true power and authority lies, and who that authority has been vested, and to realize and understand that the authority that the Most High has is unchecked. It's unchecked. And I often say to people, because sometimes a lot of things get stirred up around election time and like different emotions and feelings. And one of the things I often try to make people aware of is don't ever forget that those of us who belong to Him, we're in this world, but we're not of this world. We are citizens of a kingdom that cannot be shaken according to the Scriptures, that has a king that never leaves his throne. So at the end of the day, no matter who is in the White House, Congress, House of Representatives, we have to keep our focus and attention on the reality of peace, justice. And if we keep our focus on the throne, it keeps us from being so suddenly be shaken and moved by what we see happening and going on. And here's the reality. I started to look at it, and when I looked at it, some time ago, the Father, some years ago, he revealed to me something that I don't really think is part of the popular as to what the real picture would be when we talk about the garment of the high priest and where it actually really relates and how it relates to us. But he opened up my understanding, and I really believe that as we embrace this and we see it, that there's going to be a picture that we can see that will really, really, really benefit us. Now, I'm not going to read the entirety of Exodus chapter 39. This is Exodus chapter 39, verses 1 to 32. And then the same account is also referenced in Exodus chapter 28, verses 1 through 49. There's a lot of verses to read. You can actually read in there about the tabernacle, read in there about the temple, and the tabernacle, and about the garments of the high priest. And we're going to see how that really relates to and connects, and what we're going to be able to see today. And I shared this some years ago again as part of understanding some things, but it was opened up to me, and I'm impressed to share it today. So Exodus chapter 39, and we'll read a few of those verses in Exodus chapter 39. And we'll read a few of those verses. Let's look at, I'll start at verse number 1. From the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, they made garments for officiating, for serving in the holy place. And they made the holy garments for Aharon, as had ordained or ordered Moshe. He made the ritual vest of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and a finely woven linen. They hammered the gold into thin plates and cut them into threads in order to work it into the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and the fine linen. Crafted by the skilled artisan. They made shoulder pieces for it, joined together. They were joined together at the two ends. Then the decorated belt on the vest used to fasten it was of the same workmanship and materials, gold, blue, purple, scarlet, yarn, and finely twined linen, as the Most High Adonai had ordered Moshe. They worked the onyx stones mounted in gold settings, engraved them with the names of the sons of Israel, as they would have engraved on the seal. Then he put on them the shoulder pieces of the vest, to be stones, calling to mind the sons of Israel, as Adonai ordered Moshe. He made the breastplate. It was crafted by skilled artisan and made like the work of the ritual vest, gold, purple, and scarlet yarn, and finely woven linen. When folded double, the breastplate was square. Double was a handspun, and by a handspin. They put it in 4 rows of stones. First row was carnelian, topaz, emerald. The second row, a green feldspar, a sapphire, and a diamond. The third row, an orange zircon, and agate, and amethyst. And the fourth row, beryl and onyx and jasper. They were mounted in settings of gold. The stones corresponded with the names of the 12 sons of Israel, and they were engraved with their names, as a seal would be, each name representing one of the 12 tribes. And so if you keep on reading down, you'll see all of the different vestments that the high priest wore. And there's a little visual aid. You can kind of see all of the important items that the high priest wore in his garment. And this is what I'm reading, understanding, and looking I am taken to a very familiar passage as I'm reading through Exodus 39, reading through Exodus 28, looking at the garment of the high priest. And the funny thing, I'm studying and looking and taking a look, and I'm led to a very familiar passage over in what we refer to the New Testament, Ephesians the 6th chapter. And what we're going to find is we're going to find that number one, the garment of the high priest represented so many different things, every color, every thread, all of those different things represented so many different aspects of the way the garments were designed. And of course, the high priest, of course, references or refers to the reality of the ministry of Yeshua as he sits the high priest even now. And so it's important for us to understand, but I want to read, Ephesians chapter 6. And I want to start at verse number 10. Ephesians chapter 6, verse number 10. Finally, grow powerful in union with the Most High, in union with his mighty strength. Use all the armor and weaponry God provides, so that you will be able to stand against the deceptive tactics of the adversary. For we are not struggling against human beings, but against the rulers, authorities, and cosmic powers governing this darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm. So take up every piece of your equipment God provides, so that when the evil day comes, you will be able to resist. And when the battle is won, you will still stand. Therefore, stand. Have the belt of truth buckled around your waist. Put on righteousness for the breastplate. And wear on your feet the readiness that comes from the good news of Shalom. Always carry the shield of trust and faith, with which you are able to quench or extinguish the flaming arrows of the evil one. And take the helmet of deliverance or salvation, along with the sword given by the Spirit, that is the word of God. As you pray at all times with all kinds of prayers and requests in the Spirit, vigilantly and persistently for all God's people. Now here is what occurred to me. What occurred to me was that I remember when I would attend vacation Bible school, I was younger, and growing up in the tradition that I grew up in. And we'd attend vacation Bible school, and they would have this poster on the wall that would have the elements of the whole armor. And on the picture would be an image of a Roman soldier dressed in his, armor for battle. And that would be the representation of putting on the whole. What I realized that to the people of the Most High, a Roman uniform would not have referenced in their mind what Shaul or what he would have been, Paul would have been referencing when he talks about these different things, because the Romans were enemies. So he would not have been using an example of a Roman garment, because think about this. The Roman garment would have been the opposite, right? The Roman garment would have been, the wrestling against flesh and blood. But when you look at the reality of the spiritual aspect of things, I was able to see clearly that the garment of the high priest is really what Shaul is referencing when he talks about it. And as we begin to go through this and see, I'm so certain that you will see. The word, before I go, let's go real quickly to Isaiah chapter 9. Before I go further, Isaiah chapter 9. Yeshayahu, that's in the Hebrew text. Isaiah chapter 9. And let's look at the reality of something that is a prophetic uh, thing spoken about Yeshua. And in your Hebrew text, it's going to be verse 5. In your traditional text, it's going to be in verse number 6. So he says, "For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. Dominion will rest on his shoulders." Your King James Bible says the government will rest upon his shoulders. Now, here's the interesting thing. So it talks about the government resting on his shoulders. That's what I'm talking about today. I'm really talking about true authority and government. So he says the government will rest upon his shoulders, but that is not sometimes what people make it applicable to. They make it applicable to human government. But you remember when Yeshua was standing before Pilate, and Pilate was asking him about his kingdom, Yeshua made it clear to him, my kingdom is not of this world. Okay, so this is not what I'm talking about. Pilate, you don't have to be nervous. I'm not here to take over your throne. I have a throne that's greater than yours. So let's not even worry about that. Matter of fact, you wouldn't even have authority and power to read my Father had not allowed this. Okay. So he says the government will rest upon his shoulder. And when I looked up the word government, studied a little bit further, it was the word misra, which actually means rule. Okay. Now, here's something interesting about authority and dominion. Some time ago, in popular vernacular teaching, I want to say it was probably between the late 90s and early 2000s, gave rise to a lot of different teachings on talking about our authority, our ability to profess, to confess, to decree, to declare. It's our authority and our power. And somewhere in the midst of that, we lost the emphasis on where the authority and where the power came from. And it almost seemed like we tried to turn the Most High into a genie who does our bidding. And because we confess, because we decree, because we declare, he has to do that which we say. We have whatever we say. That's operating and that's using faith. But really, that's a form of business. We don't practice the law. But anyway, he says, so we got into that. And one of the aspects that we lost in that authority, our authority, is realizing that our authority is not sovereign. Our authority is it means that what the centurion said to Yeshua when he says, you don't have to go to my house. Word, because I'm a centurion and I know how this works. I know what it looks like when a person is both in authority and under authority. So he says to him, I know that you speak the word, that my servant will be healed, because you demonstrate to me what it is like to be in authority and under authority. And we understand that it is the authority that we are under that solidifies, that makes the authority that we are in work. Without submission to his authority, we have no. So when you look at the way and the manner of the life that the high priest had to live in a manner that was submitted to the instructions and the will of the Most High, I'm afraid that we missed it because we feel in some ways because we've been indoctrinated such that we can disobey him and still use his authority. It does not work. So it says the government will rest upon his shoulder. And the funny thing is that the number that represents government is the number 12. Okay. And whenever you looked at the garment of the high priest, as we just got through reading there, the onyx stone sat where? On the shoulders of the high priest. 6 tribes on one side, 6 on the other. 6 plus 6 is 12. So there was authority, and authority was vested in him. But he could not function in that authority unless every instruction had been followed. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm not going to talk very much about this portion of the book today, but I'm going to mention one of the things that was made so clear and aware to me is that everything the Father did in the very beginning really speaks to him. Everything he did from the very beginning was a pattern for us to understand, for us to be able to perceive what he's demonstrating. One of the beautiful things about that garment, I'm going to get into the main thing. One of the beautiful things about the garment, if you look on the photo that we have at the very, very bottom, it points to the skirts of the garment, where there was on the garment, and when you read it, Exodus 28, Exodus 39, you see that on the bottom of the garment was a series of veils and pomegranates. On the bottom of the garment specifically, the Father does everything with purpose. And if you look at the instructions, the veils that were on the bottom of the skirt of the garment was 9 veils. Okay? Also, on the bottom of that garment were 9 pomegranates. Take some time to study, you will find out that the veils on the skirt, the bottom of the garment of the high priest, represented the 9 gifts of Holy Spirit. The 9 pomegranates represented the 9 aspects of the Spirit. So here's the picture. The Father never intended for that to be gifts without fruit. That gifts and fruit were intended to function together. And unfortunately, sometimes in our present understanding, we are celebratory of gifts while we ignore the absence of fruit. And so we have to be aware that there is a certain manner of how we're supposed to act. And let me just get you to understand that we are, according to what we read in the scripture, and we'll get into it in a moment. He said that he would make us unto him a kingdom of priests. We're talking about royalty and priesthood, which requires a level and degree of obedience. Because here's what I'm telling you. Sometimes when we see the news and those sort of things like that, we have to understand that we don't take the reports the same way. We're in the world, but not of the world. Right. We don't take the reports the same way, with the same perspective, with the same attitude, with the same outlook as those who are in the world. I don't inundate myself with CNN and ABC, all of that. Okay. What I do is understand, Isaiah said, who have believed our report. Thank you. So I embrace the reality of what he says, and everything I see and hear, I perceive it, I look at it through the lens of what he's already said. And what we have to understand is, while everybody is specifically zeroed in, paying attention to what is happening between Russia and Ukraine, we can't lose the sight of the reality that we are in a spiritual warfare. We are not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against principalities. There is a principality, there is a spiritual wickedness that is at work, and our fight is in prayer. But we have to understand why we can intercede. Do you understand that it was the job of the priest to intercede on the behalf of the people before the Most High? So we have a responsibility, as what Peter says to us, a royal. You are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people who should show forth the praise of them who have called you out of darkness and into the marvelous light. So what we start to understand is that when Shaul is talking to us here in Ephesians 6th chapter, he's making reference to the garment of the high priest. Because this is the whole armor. So Ephesians chapter 6, let's look at verse number 14. First thing that we're told in verse number 14 in Ephesians chapter 6 is to have our loins girt about with truth. Okay? Might do a little back and forth flipping. Okay? So Exodus chapter 39, let's go back.
Oh, wait, I do.
Exodus chapter 39, let's flip back. Okay? So we got Exodus chapter 39. Now Ephesians chapter 6, verse number 14 says, to have your loins girt about with what? Truth. All right? So let's look at Exodus chapter 39. Look at verse number 5. The decorated belt on the vest used to fasten it was of the same workmanship and materials, gold, blue, purple, scarlet, white, and finely twined linen, as Adonai had ordered Moshe. So it was the sash that was around his waist. So it was the picture and the image of the loins being girt about the truth. Yeah. Look over Isaiah chapter 1. The beautiful thing is this is all throughout, this is all in the scripture. And we can see for ourselves. Isaiah chapter 11, look at verse number 4. So beautiful. But he will judge the impoverished justly. I think the King James Bible, I think some of the early righteousness. So he will judge the impoverished justly. He will decide fairly for the humble of the land. He will strike the land with a rod from his mouth and slay the wicked with the breath from his lips. Justice will be the belt around his waist. Faithfulness, the sash around his waist. So clearly, Paul is not making reference. Paul is not making reference to a Roman soldier. No. Roman soldier didn't have a sash. He didn't have his loins girt about with truth. Now, if you think about that, think about that. Have you ever seen, I've seen witness people who had to have hip replacements. One of the things that happens is, they have hip replacement surgery. A lot of times it takes a long time. They have to really walk again once they, come through recovery. But when you understand, like, the makeup of your anatomy, this area of your body is necessary and essential to be intact in order for you to actually be able to balance, in order for you to actually be able to function and walk properly. If you don't have a solid core in a sense in that reality, it can really hurt you. Really cause you significant and serious injury. But you don't have the ability to balance, to off balance. Kind of, in some ways, I see people who have hip replacement surgery, they kind of sway a little bit, like they're trying to learn how to balance. Because the main part of walking is get balance, right? You have to learn balance first, and how to, then manage that balance. And so it's interesting that he used the term that your loins have to be that you get truth, and what truth does is it makes you stable. It prevents you from swaying to the left or to the right. It's important that we have the ability to withstand. We understand. Very clearly. I taught maybe a couple years ago on a series concerning the spirit of the Antichrist. And the reality that the spirit of the Antichrist is definitely at work, active in the world, has been for some time. And it's why we don't in the kingdom. Okay? Because there were some things that happened over the course of history, and I think probably more recent history, especially, I don't know if you were, if you were perceptive at all. When we got to 2016, that was something really, I mean, when you're talking about like spiritual warfare, activity, it got really strange. And what started happening was, so many people started to be divided among so many different lines, so many different things. And so I'm listening to the Father and I'm hearing, what he's saying, and he's kind of talking to me about the reality of not getting caught and swayed in it because it's a distraction and just, not allowing us, because in the body, in the kingdom, there is no negative division, because there is a division that has to do with destruction, but then there is a division that has to do with order. And so the Father, he causes a division, but that division is just specifically for the order, for the proper operation, for the proper flow of things. There has to be an order. And so, there's a division of today. In the kingdom, there's a division of responsibility. When the enemy brings division, it is to separate. It is to bring. Matter of fact, the word enemy actually means to secure or to separate from safety. That's correct. When it's talking about the adversary, it means to secure you separate from safety. Wow. And as things started to stir, right? There was already so many divisions that were taking place and happening. And when we got to the rise of Corona and all this different, it seemed like those divisions. Then the divisions became, not just political party divisions. They became mask or no mask, vaccine or no vaccine. It was just divisions all the way down the line. And so the Father opened my understanding. He was like, don't do it. It's a distraction. You are not fighting against flesh and blood. Right? I'm not fighting against flesh and blood, so I don't have vitriol and hatred in my heart because of your political party. And so I'm looking at him saying to me, and it's so funny. The thing that he brought to my mind was, when people were saying left wing, right wing, and he was like, it doesn't matter if you're on the left wing or the right wing if you're on the wrong bird. There you go. He said you need to pay attention to what bird. Is it the raven or is it the dove? He talks to me from his word. And so he says to me, whenever you get involved in a battle between flesh and blood, whenever you allow yourself to seek to get involved in a battle between flesh and blood, you are actually relinquishing and giving up the spiritual authority, because you are now stepping out from under my authority. If you fight in the flesh, you're stepping out from under my authority, and now whatever authority you have, which is none, right? Because the fight between flesh and blood is a never-ending battle. There's always going to be a fight. There's always going to be something to fight over. Always be something to be divided over. And so we're not in a flesh and blood fight. So we have to take our sights off of flesh and blood and begin to perceive and begin to see where the spiritual warfare really is. But we're not going to be able to effectively fight without our armor. Watch this. And we're not going to be able to effectively embrace our armor if we have the wrong perspective. So he says, let your loins be girded about with truth. breastplate of righteousness. Ephesians chapter 6, right? Still verse 14. He says, and put on, now I like the wording here in the Hebrew text, because your King James Bible says, and put on the breastplate of righteousness. But the Hebrew text here says, put on righteousness as a breastplate. Why? Why righteousness as a breastplate? And when you look at that breastplate that the high priest wore, again, it was joined together, these onyx stones joined together with these tribes, the names of the tribes. Names of the tribes were on both shoulders. Names of the tribes were on the breastplate that was there. And if you read and study in Exodus chapter 28, let's look there real quick. Let's see what happened with the Exodus 28, yes, verse number 30. Exodus 28, verse 30. Well, let's look at verse 29. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Aharon will carry the names of the sons of Israel on the breastplate for judging. Over his heart, when he enters the holy place as a continual reminder before the Most High Adonai, you are to put the Urim and in the breastplate for judging. They will be over Aharon's heart when he goes into the presence of Adonai. Thus, Aharon will always have the means for making decisions for the people of Israel over his heart when he is in the presence of the Lord. So he explains further here that when he has that breastplate on, the whole purpose of him having the breastplate on is because he is to have the people of Israel as he leads them. He's to understand his responsibility of them being in his heart. And what he's to do is he's to utilize that breastplate as a means of judging. And when I kind of read some of the things, it said that when people sometimes go before the presence of the Father, that he was asking him and inquiring of him, that sometimes the breastplate would kind of illuminate in a certain way, and it would give him the ability to discern or make the right decision concerning the people. Do you understand that is exactly what righteousness does for us? Righteousness, when we embrace righteousness, righteousness helps us to perceive what is right, what is wrong. Righteousness gives us the ability to perceive, because in reality, that's why it's important for us to never get involved in self-righteousness, because self-righteousness skews our perspective. And what becomes right is what is right in our own eyes. But when we embrace righteousness, we embrace what is right in the eyes of the Most High. And when we embrace that righteousness, our perception is clearer, where we can clearly understand and perceive and be able to carry out and demonstrate that which is right. I cannot, watch this. This is why the Father did not leave righteousness to be something that we attain on our own. Because we can't do it. Righteousness can only be attained by the reality of the embrace of what the Father has said is right. Righteousness is something that we have been granted the opportunity to be in, to get into. So we deal in righteousness, because righteousness helps us to perceive, so that we might accurately. Go back to Isaiah chapter 9. Isaiah chapter 9. Yeshayahu. I'm sorry, that's not what Isaiah chapter 61. That was the other one. That was the already. Isaiah chapter 61, look at verse number 10. Okay. Now we do understand this is the passage that Yeshua read when he stood up in the temple and looked for chapter. It says he opened up the place. The book of Isaiah, where it was written about him. The Spirit of the Most High is upon me. Let's look at verse number 10. So we know this is definitely speaking of Yeshua. 61 and 10. Watch this. I almost need this.
Okay,
Let's start at verse 1.
There you go.
It said, the Spirit of Adonai Elohim is upon me, because Adonai has anointed me to announce the good news to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom to the captives, to let out into light those bound in the dark, to proclaim the year and favor of Adonai, the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort those who mourn. Yes, provide for those in Zion or Zion who mourn, giving them garlands instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the cloak of praise instead of a heavy spirit. So they will be called oaks of righteousness, planted by Adonai, in which he takes pride. They will rebuild the ancient ruins, restore sites long destroyed. They will renew ruined cities destroyed by many generations ago. Strangers will stand and feed your flocks. Foreigners will ply your land and tend your vines. But you will be called what? You will be called Kohanim of Adonai, a priest of Adonai, spoken of as ministers of our God. You will feed on the wealth of nations and revel in their riches, because your shame, which was double, and because they cried, they deserve disgrace. Therefore, in their land they will, what they own will be doubled, and joy forever will be theirs. For I love justice, I hate robbery, for burnt offerings, so I will be faithful to reward them and make an eternal covenant with them. Their descendants will be known among the nations, their offspring among the people. All who see them will acknowledge that they are the seed of Adonai. I am so joyful in Adonai. My soul rejoices in my God. Watch this. He hath clothed me in salvation, dressed me with a robe of triumph, like a bridegroom wearing a festive turban, like a bride adorned with her jewels. Again, we're seeing the reality of him speaking to us as people and saying, I am making you peace. I'm giving you a sense of an understanding that you are. Let me tell you something. I talk about this a lot because I feel like it's so important. One of the other strange doctrines that crept up as this one came a little bit earlier was the belief, the idea somehow that those of us those who came into the knowledge of Savior Yeshua have become a replacement for the people of the Most High. No. You can't read Romans 11 chapter and believe it. He makes it clear when the language is used, accepted into the life, engrafted into the life. How can you be engrafted into something you replace? The conversation that I always have with people to have you understand is I have 3 natural born children who are born. Those 3 natural born children that are born to me are my children by birth, right? They are my children. They belong to me. I sired them. They're Abba, right? If I sat down, the wife and I sat down with rules of what governs our home to those three children, they embrace that, they walk in. If we, Romans the 8th chapter, receive the Spirit, happen to get somebody who receives the spirit of adoption, if somebody is adopted into the fold of our family, when they become a part of our household, they don't replace the three children. They join the three children, watch. And although they were not there for the original conversation, what governs the house, the rules that govern the house, now apply to them because they have been adopted into a family that's already established. So it's a continuation. We have been adopted into a family, not replaced a family. We have become a part of become a part of his faith, his household. We become a part, that's why these terminology household of faith. We become a part of that. We have joined. So there is a covenant that has been established. And Charles says, those of you who were once foreigners and strangers away from the commonwealth of Israel have now been brought nigh. And so there is a joining together, watch this, which then qualifies us. To be priests. Not high priests. No. Only children. But we are priests unto him. And as priests unto him, we have the responsibility of interceding between the Most High. We got a responsibility. And we got to understand the weight of that responsibility. We got to understand the beauty of that responsibility. One of the things that describes the garments, it says these garments were made for beauty and made for holiness. But here's a beautiful thing. Whenever you look at the garment of the high priest, and you look at the materials that actually made the veil that was in the temple, whenever the priest functioned in his role and he was in the temple, his garment blended so well with the curtain that you never saw it. So the garment was never about the priest. The beautiful garment that the priest wore was never about him. It was never, the attention was never to be. When those people saw the purple and they saw the blue and they saw the gold, they understood that these things represented something else that had nothing to do with him. Because if he violated, if he transgressed, when he went before the presence, he was judged. Death came upon him. So we have that responsibility to understand our reality as priests. So watch this. When we put on the whole armor, we're not putting on the whole armor as Roman soldiers. We're putting on the whole armor as priests. When we put on the whole armor, when we put on the vestments, when we put on that which he has sanctified as holy. These are things that he has sanctified as holy. And if we put on that whole armor, when we put that on, we are putting it on because we understand we have a responsibility and obligation to operate in the place of priesthood, holy nation, peculiar people. You don't represent yourself. So the breastplate was righteousness. And so he says this, that it was to give clear judgment so that the priest would rule by the commands from the that we're to rule, the priest was to rule from the place of the command. He couldn't come up with his own rules. He had to rule according to the rule that had been established by the Father, according to the commands, but from the heart. You know, that was the issue with the scribes and Pharisees. The issue with the scribes and Pharisees is they knew a version of a command, their own version of a command, but there was an absence of what was really in the heart. That's why Yeshua rebuked them and said, you have no right to outside of watch. On the inside, supporters is what he referred to them as. Graves. Right? He referred to them in a sense that, hey, you know, you got this is not in the heart, this is in the head. Something we have to really guard against. That this is not about information that's in our head. This is really about the demonstration of how we live and how we love. About the demonstration, there is a way that I, as a representative of the kingdom, is supposed to treat in truth. There's a way that we are to embrace each other and understand the reality of the nature of our relationship. Right? That the only culture at the end is this one is what's of utmost importance. But do you understand that the commands of God to Psalm 19? I will hide your word in my heart, that I will not sin against you. And even the word heart in Hebrew means what goes in the house. The right things in my heart. The right things in my house. It's gotta be in, it's gotta be in here. So Aharon was to judge by the commands, rule by the commands from the heart. Now, who side note right here? Father taught me something about the name. Remember I told you I have authority, I have dominion, and I have power. He brought my attention back to something. He says, when you speak of dominion and authority and power as it relates to me, that's exclusive, sovereign individual. But if you look at the way he ordained dominion and authority and power to operate among us, it was inclusive. That's why when he spoke to man, he didn't say let him have dominion. He said let them have dominion. And there's an aspect of dominion and authority that we never have unless we understand the collective reality of what that's supposed to be. The other teaching taught people individual authority, which gave you a sense, a wrong sense of you having the degree of sovereignty. So much that you thought that that sovereignty could overrule what the Father said. Right? And we keep telling people, no, you don't have whatever you say. You don't just because well, the Bible says, I shall decree a thing, and it shall be established in the light. What are the prerequisites? That's it. Right? You have whatever you say. Okay, well, yeah, well, do we want to exclude John the 15th chapter? If you abide in me and my word abide in you, then you can ask what you want, and it shall be given unto you. Without the prerequisite, you're just talking. And the enemy does not recognize my authority without asking sons of Sceva. The enemy does not recognize my authority. And the very fact that you call it your authority means that it is yours. Which means that that's why it doesn't work. Your authority does nothing. In authority, under authority. If I don't have that under part right, I'm not in anything. What does he say? The Father resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourself under the mighty hand. You don't even have the ability to resist the enemy unless you submit. The enemy is afraid of your name? Absolutely not. He knows your name. How dirty your name is. He's not afraid of your name. The name is above every name. Oh, yeah. Right? So the breastplate, right? So righteousness is the breastplate. Righteousness is what we use to both discern and carry out the real will of God. You don't have any authority, you don't have any dominion without righteousness. You don't have any authority. And I'm gonna tell you something else I've learned. Authority is not volume. You know, there are people who are loud and wrong. Authority is not volume. Scripture says that where the word of a king is at power, the king can literally sit on his throne and whisper, and the word will go all throughout the kingdom. When you look at how Yeshua operated, he was never nervous, no matter what he did. What do you mean? It's a storm. Disciples are afraid. What's he doing? He's in the bottom of the ship. Bottom of the ship. You know he was feeling all of it. When he sleep. How? He's a star shalom, right? So, what the heck? Why y'all afraid? You don't know who I am. I'm gonna go with you. Why would I let anything happen? Right? And because he spoke Hebrew, he would say shalom. Right? And when we talk about shalom, you know, I've talked many times the word shalom, you know, it actually means the power to destroy, the power to make chaos. So when we're talking about shalom, we're talking about in order to have shalom, it means you battle with whatever the thing that's causing chaos, you battle that. You eliminate that. And you eliminate that. And you know how you do it? You do it through Hashem. Hashem in the Hebrew means the name. Right? So shalom, Shashim, that is in there. That's what the sheen looks like. Shalom. Okay. So when you destroy the power that is connected to chaos, you chop it up. Right? It's like teeth. You chop it up. Right? You destroy the power that is connected to chaos. That's where you use that power that he has given to you. Right? John chapter 10, I believe it is, verse number 19. I've given you power over all the power of the enemy, and nothing by any means shall harm you. Afraid of what? Luke chapter 10, verse 19. Luke chapter 10, verse number 19. I've given you authority over all the power of the enemy. Nothing by any means shall harm you. Afraid of the adversary? Who? Why? What? What name? What name? Me? No. Because I know who the Most High is. So Hashem, the name, what destroys chaos. His name destroys chaos. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it, they are safe. Afraid of what? Nothing. Okay. So the next part of this is Ephesians chapter 6, verse 15. Now this was so interesting because he says, let your feet be shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. And when I looked at this, I found out, which was so interesting, it's like, wait a minute, but the priest was barefooted. So, what do you mean? You know, what is he putting on his feet? What he's putting on his feet? Go to Exodus, go to Leviticus chapter 8, verse number 24. Leviticus chapter 8, verse 24. I'm just telling you, the Father's so wise. I know he was smart enough. So Leviticus chapter 8, verse number 24, look what was happening. Well, verse number 22 says, then the other ram was presented, the ram of consecration. Aharon and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram. Verse 23, after it had been slaughtered, Moshe took some of its blood, put it on the tip of Aharon's right ear, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Next, Aharon's sons were brought, and Moshe put some of the blood on the tips of their right ears, on the thumb of their right hands, and on the big toes of their right foot. Now, notice what was used here. Blood. Blood was applied on this ram. Blood was applied to the right ear. We already know for the responsibility of the priest was when it came to blood. Participate in ceremonial sacrifices that related to the blood. And so when he was talking about them having their feet shod, and then he said to me, don't forget that my requirement when you come on the holy ground is to take your shoes off. And then this week made me realize, he says, they were never to operate in their holy function with man-made shoes. Never. 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 Not the foot covering of man, because he'd already covered the foot. He'd already had something applied to their foot to consecrate. But understand that their walk had to be consecrated. So he says, your feet are shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. And you know what Isaiah says? Preach the gospel. Bring glad tidings of good things. That when I come, watch this, I come like he came. My intention is to bring peace. My intention when I come, my walk is not conflict. Somehow that's not the walk. The walk is not a walk of conflict. And do you understand that the responsibility, even when you get over to what we call the New Testament, he says that one of the responsibilities of those who are to function in ministry is not to be a brawler, right? We have an even temper, right? But there's a certain responsibility that we have to our walk. That our walk must be that which is consecrated. And I wrote this note. Their feet were anointed to consecrate their walk. Their ears were anointed to consecrate their hearing. So that they are consecrated to hear God's voice. And then their thumbs were consecrated because they had the responsibility to go to school. It's important. Because the spirit of the Antichrist operates in false sense of peace. Right? And they say peace and safety, self-destruction comes upon them because he operates in a false sense of peace. The peace that the anti-Messiah operates sounds like this. Let's all go along and get along. Let's all coexist. Let's all say we serve. Let's all say that we come with the That's that false sense of peace. That's that stuff that the chaos is like moving right up under the surface of what is going on and at the right time. It all springs through. But we're talking about him saying, peace I give you, not peace like the world gives. Right? These things that I've spoken to you, that my joy might remain in you, your joy might be full. What he has declared and what he has said to us is what we then declare to other people. He only told his disciples to go and declare to other people what he declared to them. Matthew chapter 28, verse 19. Go into all the world, make disciples, teaching them to observe whatever it is that I have commanded you. Lord, baptize in the name of God, Son, Holy Spirit, and Lord with you even to the end of the world. So he says, you want to communicate. When you come as I came. So as holy priests, as those who function in the responsibility of priesthood, do we even realize the weight of our responsibility? Do we realize the weight of our responsibility to other people? That when we operate and we function as priests, that's why when you read in Ephesians, when you read all the way down in that 6th chapter, he says, be ready to pray. Right? Because this is all about you standing in the gap as an intercession. Really, all of us are intercessors. You know, some of the other teaching kind of makes it as if it's exclusive group, but all of us are intercessors. Okay, let's move. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 16 talks about the shield of faith, right? That we're able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. You know what our shield is? Our shield is the trust in the Most High. Psalms 84. Oh, I'm telling y'all, when I saw this in this part, it's like, you mean to tell me? I'm gonna get a movie, so it's full time. But Psalm 84, verse 11. Hmm. 12. He says, for Adonai God is a son in his shield. Adonai bestows favor and honor. He will not withhold any good thing from those who live whose lives are pure. Psalm 115, verse 11. You, wow. Verse 9. Israel trusts in Adonai. He is their help and shield. House of Aharon. That's interesting. Trust in Adonai. He is their help and shield. You who fear Adonai the Most High, trust in Adonai. He is their help and shield. Our trust in the Most High is our shield. These are the words that are indicated by the word enemy. When you read the word enemy, it means to lead, to secure, and then this is where there's a distinction. When you look at the word enemy as it relates to the adversary, the word enemy as it relates to the adversary is to lead, to secure. To lead, to secure, to separate you from the house. But the Father said to his people, I will be an enemy to your enemy. And when he says enemy, he's saying, I will lead to secure you by my work in the house. But here's the thing. You have to be careful who has your perspective. Because whoever has your perspective determines whether you're going to be safe or separated. So our perspective has got to be short. Our perspective has got to be clear, because if the enemy gets your perspective and causes you to not trust him, because here's the reality. Let's understand, if you don't trust the Most High, you trust something. And you trust someone. And you know what I have discovered? I have discovered that the root to distrust in the Most High is we trust ourselves too much. Amen. And we trust ourselves so much, and we're warned not to put our confidence in the flesh. That we don't trust I don't trust my flesh anymore than I trust yours. That we're not to have confidence in the flesh whatsoever. I don't have confidence and trust because if I have confidence and trust in myself, I'm telling you, the enemy will take my perspective and he will cause me to separate. And I'm gonna tell you what's so funny. I know we entered, 2022, as it relates to the Gregorian calendar, but there's a Hebraic calendar, and then the Hebraic calendar, year 5782, right? And the funny thing was the 5782. When I looked at those particular numbers, and the individual numbers. The message is that behold, that's what it means. Behold, which is hey. Hey, okay. Behold, and then there is a 7. Behold, or to see, or to perceive. And then the 7 is to, I would say the word produce or sustain. Okay. Then there is life, Chayim, letter 8. And you'll be able to see these letters coincide with the different Hebrew alphabet. And these different Hebrew alphabet give you the message. And then there was the word or the alphabet Bet, which is the house, right? So 5782, the message, coded message was, behold, I produce or sustain life in the house. So wouldn't it be the goal of the enemy to separate you from the house? Watch this, y'all. Do you understand that when they started reporting the news about people getting sick? Do you know people got sick in Walmart, people got sick in concerts, people got sick in weddings, and people got sick in other events? But do you know the main thing that they're reporting the news about people getting sick is at the house? What a trick to separate you. Because his goal is to sustain you, to sustain your life. How does he sustain your life? These words that I speak. Their spirit in their life. So his goal, the goal of the adversary is to separate you from the house, but the goal of the Most High is to be an enemy to your enemy, to keep him from separating you, to keep you safe, to protect you by his working. It's a reality. Stay in the house. Stay in the house. And by the way, the word command means to connect to God. That's what the word command in Hebrew means. To connect to God. So how you connect to him? How you stay connected to him? To connect to him. It's the hook. It's like to follow the commands, it's like a fish being hooked on a line. The hook in his mouth pulls him. That's right. It directs him. It guides him. Oh. It was so funny when I studied that, because I remember when I was young, Pentecostal, the saints used to sing a song, and I didn't remember. I remember the words of the song, and when I looked up the word command and saw the word command meant that I was hooked, right? You get hooked on a lot of stuff. Whatever you get hooked on draws you to it, doesn't it? Whenever you get hooked on drugs, it draws you to it. Hooked on pornography, it draws you to it. There's a drawing, whatever you hooked on to. So to be commanded means you're hooked on God, which means you're drawn to him, right? So we're not talking about legalism. We're talking about obedience that draws me to him, where it gets me beyond the point where I feel the obligation that I have to do it, and I celebrate the reality that I get to do. So I'm hooked, drawn, pulled in, reeled in. But the old saints used to sing a song, and I remember the name of the word of the song says, God's got a hook in me. I don't want to get loose. I don't want to get loose from the word. I'm like, somebody had a revelation. Even without knowing it, somebody had a revelation. Because he dropped it. That's what happens when I start already doing that. I realize this is not about him controlling me as much as it is about him blessing me and filling my life with the good, for him causing Hayim, life to spring forth in me. Through words I speak of spirit in their life. The commands of life, people love these commands and peace. Our perspective of peace. None of them actually are. Love it. Okay, so we read Psalm 115, verse 11, look at verse 13. He will bless those who fear Adonai, great and small alike. So he is our shield. I trust in him as our shield, which is all the fiery darts. All right. I don't have time to really go into, I don't want to go into like the exhaustive thing, but the way people talk about it, that's people that talk to use faith for things. Faith is not to use for things. Nowhere scripture is faith is used for things. People have given a philosophy using scripture that makes people believe that faith is not. According to what I understand, over the process of obedience. That's it. There you go. But seek me first the kingdom and his righteousness, all these things will be added. And say when they will be added. But all these things will be added unto you. Right? But we call ourselves using our faces and we put it on a timeline. Yeah. And we tell them, oh, you know, you gotta do it right now, right now, right now. What if his plan is not right now? This man may be later. Israel cried out to be delivered for a long time. But it wasn't until the fullness of time came when he decided, okay, now it's time. Okay? He's sovereign. Oh, that is, his power and authority is sovereign. It's not subjected to whatever happens through the rule of man. Legislation does not change what he says. His authority is sure and it is established and it is settled. You can have as many surgeries as you want. You can do whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, his authority is established. And if you were born as a male, you would still be a male. There you go. Because his authority has been established from the very beginning. You can't even go around it. Do you know if you had a cosmetic surgery as a male and you died? Do you know if they have forensic science to study your remains, if it was just a skeleton that they would be able to determine if you were dead? That's it. It's established. Okay? His rule has been set. And watch this, and our responsibility as a priest, we uphold the standard. That's it. We never compromise the standard. We're in a spiritual warfare, so we can never compromise the standard that he has set because it's not our standard to adjust. Oh gosh. Anything that attempts to adjust the standard that he has set is in. That's our responsibility, y'all. And so the word shield it means his covenant. We trust him. Okay? We trust him. All right. Verse 17 in Ephesians chapter 6 refers to the helmet, the headpiece, the turban. Some translation use the term mitre. Okay. Roman Catholicism created a wicked version of this mitre. It's really the hat for the priest of David. Yes. No fish hat. That's what they created. Okay. But the helmet, which was the headpiece, and it was salvation. this Hebrew text is a helmet of deliverance, right? So salvation is something, and one of the things I often tell people about salvation, so we have a proper understanding of salvation, is that salvation is not a moment. People have been taught salvation is like a moment at an altar, a moment when I give my heart over. Salvation, that's what the process of salvation is. I enter into salvation in that moment. And when I give my heart over to him, I enter into the process called salvation. Because the process of salvation does not happen to the end. It's not completed until the end. He that endures to the end, because there are some people who start off the race who don't finish it. If you don't finish it, that's it. Some people you'll turn away. That's why we don't teach a once saved, always saved. Because that is not a reality. When I receive him, I become one of his. Now I have the responsibility that should be a continuity. I got to continue in. Because here's the reality, y'all. Some people are not going to live to the end. Some people are going to fall away. Some people are going to turn away. And they're going to go into all these other different things, being seduced by doctrines of devils and all these kind of different things. It's a reality. Now I'm so glad that that's right. Oh, yeah. Hmm? Yeah, I know. He saw 144,000. Got to read a little bit further. Okay. Just read a little bit further. He said, I saw another from every nation, every tribe upon the face. That the Father, what he did, y'all, was he's building a nation out of nations. That's it. He's building a people out of people. So we come to a place and to a reality where, watch this, I don't mind being separated. I don't mind being ostracized or looked at as weird or looked at as strange out by myself. Sometimes you gotta be like John and be in the wilderness and locusts and wild honey by yourself, but you're following what he said. And while everybody else is saying whatever they're saying, he was consistently saying, repent for the kingdom of heaven. And it stirred up persecution, which is what we really should be prepared for. Because if you look, a lot of times whenever Israel was talking about other nations, one of the first places they wanted to go was to the temple. Desecrate the temple, come against the priest. And you can understand, if you study the priesthood, you will understand that the priesthood was to go first in battle. That's right. When Israel went to battle, when Israel went to war, the priesthood was to go first. They were to be carrying the Ark of the Covenant. Right? And the Levites and those who follow behind would be blowing the shofar, the sound of the shofar. Right? Because that was the visible sign to the people that the Father's presence was with them. But when the priests were in violation of what he said, even though they went through all of those things and carried the Ark of the Covenant and went out, if they were in violation and were obedient to him, Israel would still be defeated. Because it was never about the furniture. It's about what the furniture represented. So the priests had a responsibility. They were first. Why do you think he said about warfare? Because he had to put the going on and go into battle. I love it. Yes, he so he says, so do you understand you should have been the high priest? And when he's telling us to put on the whole armor, not only is he telling about these different elements of the reality, but he's telling us about it. That's it. Because we go Yeshua and we go into, I have to keep saying spiritual warfare. Spiritual warfare. It's something that occurred to me when I was looking back at this. And that is, we have to always check our attitude. Because the enemy will sometimes stir up things between you and another individual, but it's only a distraction to get you off course. It's only to get you off balance so that you won't even realize what a real fight is. If you spend your time fighting and bickering and going back and forth, and it's like, man, at some point you gotta realize, how spiritual warfare works. Sometimes spiritual warfare works in such a way and in such a manner where if the enemy is at work, because y'all that battlefield right here, that's in that mind, if we're not winning the battle here in our mind, the enemy is all the way around. All the way around. So put that helmet of salvation. Put that head protection. You got to protect your mind, and you got the power to do so. Casting down imagination. Every high thing that exalts itself against it. I like how this text says it. It said, make every thought obey the Messiah. Whenever I recognize a thought and I recognize where that thought has come from, if that thought is not in alignment with the reality of who the Messiah is, I'm not going to let that thought carry me away. That's one of those wicked devices of the enemy. Offense is a fiery dart. If I'm not careful, I'll find myself. Because I've even found, Pastor, that sometimes, the enemy will even make you hear something that wasn't said. I heard you say that. No, I didn't say that. Yes, you did. I didn't say that. And if you're not spiritual, you will be convinced that what you heard was what you heard, or who you heard it from was not who you really heard it from. So the helmet with the sign of his authority, sign of his office. You can read Exodus 28, verse 35 to 36, but look over to Isaiah 59 and 17. Now, a couple more verses in the book. Because I gotta tell you about the story. I gotta tell you about the story. Isaiah 59. It's okay we get some out of this today. So, Isaiah 59, verse 17. He put on righteousness as a breastplate, salvation as a helmet on his head. He clothed himself with garments of vengeance and wrapped himself in a mantle of zeal. He repays according to their deeds, fury to his foes, reprisal to his enemies, to the coastlands he will repay. So again, prophetically declared, speaking about the reality of that helmet of salvation. Putting on helmet as salvation. All right, the B part of Ephesians chapter 6, verse 17 says, let's read that again. I want to read that again because he emphasizes when he gets to this. He says, above all, we gotta really pay attention to what he's saying. Look at verse number 17. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 17. And take the helmet of deliverance along with the sword given by the Spirit, that is the word of God, as you pray at all times with all kinds of prayers and requests in the Spirit, vigilantly and persistently for all God's people. So again, priesthood, intercession, interceding, in between. So I looked up the sword of the Spirit. And when I looked up the sword of the Spirit, you do know that everybody that is quoting scripture is not teaching scripture. That sometimes people are teaching a philosophy of the scripture. A lot of times I tell people it's important that you receive the word and not my word about the word. That's the difference. So it's important for us to understand what the sword of the Spirit is. Because the sword of the Spirit, this is what I looked up, and I saw the sword of Ruach HaKodesh is Yah's mouth or Yah's voice sent. The sword of the Spirit. Watch this. It's not my word. It's not the words that are coming out of my mouth. It is the words that have come from his mouth. That's the sword of the Spirit. Sure, these words that I speak, they are spirit and they are life. Revelation chapter 1, verse number 16. Let's show it. Revelation chapter 1, verse number 16. In his right hand he held 7 stars. Out of his mouth went a sharp, double-edged sword, and his face was like the sun shining in motion. Speaking of who? Yeshua. That when the voice of his authority goes out, when his voice is sent forth, right? We understand how his voice works, how his word works. From the very beginning, the earth has been responding to his voice. From the very beginning, he spoke like darkness divided. He spoke, and all these different things begin to happen. Firmaments divided, land and water divided by the words that were spoken forth out of his mouth. Right? And we understand what Hebrews chapter 4 tells us about his word. Word is quick, alive, Chaim. His word is quick and powerful, sharper than a double-edged sword, dividing asunder soul, spirit, marrow, joints of the bones, discerns the thoughts and intents of the heart. His word sent, his word from his mouth is like the double-edged sword. So his word comes, and his word is surgical. And his word is precise. Watch this. And it's interesting that his word can both cut and heal at the same time. Cut and heal at the same time. And the reality is, this is why wherever we stand, we got to make sure we stand with word. We got to make sure we stand with truth. We got to make sure that we follow suit and understand that we cannot alter what has come from his mouth. Because if we're altering what is coming from his mouth, we're not really attaining or coming to the reality. You know, or what I think, or what I feel is, and my opinion is, my thoughts about it. Man should not live by bread alone, by every word that proceeds forth out of his mouth. So I want to hear what's coming out of his mouth, not out of my own mouth. You know what the Father said to me? He said that a lot of people are receiving men's mind and not the Father. But we've got to be where the scripture says, he gives me the tongue of the Lord, that I may speak the word. He told his disciples, don't worry about what you're going to say when you are arrested, because I will give you a mouth and wisdom that your adversary cannot gainsay or overcome. I'm going to give you what you need to say. That you need to say, I will work your lips, I will work your mouth. Let me do it. Not your own mind, not your own, not the seminary theory. Let me word your lips. Because when it's spoken from me, my word does not go out in return. It accomplishes that which I please and prospers what I say. Whenever his word is spoken, whenever his word declared, it is his word that works effectually in our lives. Right? It is his word. It is the full counsel of his word that makes the impact that needs to be made in our lives. And we as priests have to be accountable to make sure that we're speaking his word and we're declaring his word, that we breathe in from him. And whatever we breathe in from him. Whatever he breathes into it. I'm not speaking my word. I heard somebody say something one time, and I was like, he said, well, he's going to honor my word. No, he's going to honor his word. And when Shaul even talks to us about prayer, that's why it's important. But even in our prayer is in alignment with his word. Not what I'm saying. God can't come by what we know on earth as it is in heaven. That he doesn't even hear us if we don't pray for him. We only have confidence that he hears us because we pray for him. But we know that if we pray for him, he hears us, and we have a petition that we desire. Even in the natural sense, you can't petition outside of what God is. So when we make our petition before high court. Wow. That's why he told me, he said, tell people, stop asking a wicked system for justice. They can't provide. Okay. It's a wicked system. This world system is wicked. The government of this world is wicked. There's principalities and rules of spiritual wickedness in high places. Okay? In all parties. If they're not subjected to the will and the heart of the Most High, the commands of the Most High, something else is governing them. And I have to understand my responsibility as an ambassador, as a representative of His, is to uphold the counsel of His word. Watch this. If we did it right, if we did it right, we will be able to hold wicked government accountable to his counsel. Here's your answer. You tell them in DC, here's the answer. You're not doing it according to this counsel. It's not going to work. That's why I listen to them. No matter which one of you, the wicked, you wicked of it. Right? Because the scripture says that when the righteous, the people rejoice. There's always evil lie. They get on right. You understand? We're ambassadors. We are from a different place. Right? We're from a different kingdom. Right? Our governor is Ruach HaKodesh. That's my governor. Leads me, guides me into all truth. Brings back to my remembrance whatever. That's what governs you. All right. So watch this. We have been delegated and dressed in his authority so that we might do his will. We have been delegated and dressed in his authority so that we might do his will. You can't put on his armor to fight your fight. You put on his armor to fight his way. Which is not fight between nations. Gotta check that. We can't have hatred in our hearts, malice in our hearts, envy in our hearts, none of those kind of different things. Okay? Last passage, 1 Peter chapter 2. I encourage you to read Exodus chapter 19, verse 6. Revelation chapter 5, verse 10, but I'm going to read 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. Thank you, Father. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. Already made reference to it. But you are a chosen people, the king's Kohanim, royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God to possess. Why? In order for you to declare the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Before, you have not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. So we have been brought into a reality and delegated authority by our Elo, Aleph, domain. Aleph being first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, first strong. It's the image of the ox. First strong, the man. So he is our El. He is the first sovereign, strong authority. And then the authority that we have stems from the authority. Psalm 62 says, twice have I heard it. It's been spoken once, but twice have I heard it. Power belongs to him. He has ownership of it, right? I only have usership of it. I know it's not a good word, but it makes sense. I get to use what he owns. So I use it in a manner that is in alignment with the owner. So we have weapons for our warfare. And I'm glad to report that we always fight. We always fight. Weapons of our warfare are not mighty. And it's funny. The stuff we are given, we're referred to as weapons. The stuff that the enemy refers to as devices. That's like coming to a fight. I got a semi-automatic weapon, and he got a cell phone. He has devices, trickery. We have a high royal responsibility to put on the whole and to fight for the warfare in the manner, in a way, according to the will of the Most High. Father, thank you so much for your word. We appreciate you, Father. Thank you that you allow your word to take root and produce fruit that is meat. Thank you that the adversary will not come and steal this from us, but it will take root, Father. It will be planted into good ground. Thank you. We love you. We praise you. We bless you. And now, we don't really spend a lot of time really talking about gifts and offering, but we normally just have a little budget here if you give, then you do it. Those of you who are watching, the cash app information is on the screen. So if you want to do it that way, you can do that. We appreciate that. To do the things that we've been given the permission to do, that the Father has given us to do. I want to say I'm thankful to the Father. Be it all of you. Bye bye. See you. Thank you so much for joining us.